The envelope didn't arrive with drama. No certified mail signature, no bold red letters screaming urgency. Just my name typed cleanly across the front, and a return address I didn't recognize at first glance. I picked it up from the kitchen counter on Thanksgiving morning, assuming it was another piece of junk mail that had somehow made its way past the postal filters. That morning had started like every holiday for the past 8 years. Quiet, deliberate, mine. The turkey was in the oven by 7 a.m., the timer set with military precision. Green beans trimmed and waiting in the colander. Sweet potato casserole assembled in the glass dish David and I had received as a wedding gift 23 years ago. Everything measured, everything controlled, everything exactly as it should be. I didn't open the envelope immediately. There were potatoes to peel, gravy to start, the table to set for guests who would arrive at 2 p.m. sharp. Vivian had called 3 days prior, her voice carrying that particular blend of sweetness and entitlement I'd learned to recognize over 18 years of family gatherings. Maggie, darling, we'll be there at 2. Tyler's coming too, and of course, Mother Eleanor, she's been asking about you. The lie sat comfortable in her mouth. Eleanor never asked about me unless Vivian planted the question first. I set the envelope on the counter and returned to the potatoes. The rhythmic scrape of the peeler against skin, the careful removal of eyes and blemishes. These small acts of preparation had become meditation. David used to stand beside me during holiday cooking, his hip bumping mine as he reached for the cutting board, his laugh filling the kitchen when I corrected his knife technique. "You run a tighter ship than my drill sergeant," he'd said once, grinning. "Your drill sergeant never had to feed your family," I'd replied. The memory still lived in the walls, in the scent of butter browning on the stove, in the way afternoon light cut through the window above the sink. 8 years since the accident. 8 years of holidays that felt like performing a play for an audience that had stopped watching. At 11:30, with the turkey golden and resting, I finally opened the envelope. The first line made my hands still. Petition for conservatorship and guardianship. I read it again, slower this time, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something reasonable. They didn't. The document stated that I, Margaret Elizabeth Thompson, age 56, was unable to effectively manage my personal and financial affairs due to diminished cognitive capacity resulting from prolonged widowhood and social withdrawal following military service. It claimed I exhibited concerning behavioral patterns, including self-isolation, resistance to family involvement, and inability to make sound financial decisions. It requested that a conservator be appointed to manage all current and future assets, income, and benefits. The petitioner was Vivian Sinclair, my sister-in-law, David's older sister, the woman who would be sitting at my table in 2.5 hours. Supporting parties: Eleanor Thompson, mother-in-law; Tyler Sinclair, nephew. I set the papers down and looked around my kitchen. Nothing suggested chaos. The counters were clean, wiped down between each cooking task. Spices returned to the rack in alphabetical order. Pot holders hanging on their designated hooks. The kind of space people called sterile when they meant organized. I picked up the packet again and read it like I was reading someone else's file. The Army teaches you that without ever naming it, detach just enough to see clearly without drowning in what you're seeing. According to the petition, my recent behavioral patterns demonstrated poor judgment. Examples included living alone without familial oversight, maintaining minimal contact with relatives, exhibiting resistance to financial guidance offered by concerned family members, and showing signs of emotional instability related to unresolved grief. That last part almost made me laugh. Not out loud, just a short exhale through my nose. Unresolved grief. As if grief had a resolution date, a checkbox you ticked when you'd properly finished mourning. There was a hearing date at the bottom of the page. December 18th, 3 weeks away. Close enough that someone had already decided this was moving forward quickly. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no messages, no warning. Vivian hadn't called to ask if I was okay. Eleanor hadn't expressed concern about my well-being. The paperwork had arrived fully formed, like a decision that didn't require my participation in the making, only in the consequences. The doorbell rang at 2:03 p.m. I smoothed my hands down the front of my navy cardigan, checked that the pearls David had given me for our 15th anniversary sat correctly at my collarbone, and opened the door. Vivian stood on the porch in a cream-colored Chanel suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The fabric draped perfectly, the cut precise enough to suggest serious tailoring. Her hair was styled in soft waves that probably required an hour with a professional. A Hermes Birkin bag dangled from the crook of her elbow, cognac leather that caught the afternoon sun. Her shoes were Christian Louboutin, the red soles flashing as she stepped forward. Behind her, Eleanor leaned on a walking stick, wearing a pale purple floral dress that had seen better decades. Tyler slouched against the porch railing, thumbs moving across his phone screen, dressed in a wrinkled gray H&M suit and what appeared to be athletic sneakers. "Maggie!" Vivian's smile was brilliant, practiced. She leaned in for an air kiss that landed somewhere near my cheek. "You look wonderful." "Doesn't she look wonderful, Mother?" Eleanor nodded without meeting my eyes. "Hello, Margaret." I stepped back to let them in. Tyler didn't look up from his phone as he passed, earbuds still dangling from one ear. The house smelled like Thanksgiving should. Roasted meat, herbs, butter, the faint sweetness of pumpkin pie cooling on the counter. Vivian made a show of inhaling deeply, her hand pressed to her chest. "It smells divine. You've outdone yourself." She moved through my living room like she was appraising real estate, her gaze calculating as it swept over the furniture, the art on the walls, the built-in bookshelves David had installed the year before he died. Eleanor settled into the armchair by the window, the one with the best afternoon light. Tyler dropped onto the couch and immediately resumed scrolling. I returned to the kitchen. The turkey needed carving, the gravy wanted attention, and I needed my hands busy with something that made sense. Vivian followed me. Of course she did. "Can I help with anything?" "It's under control. You always say that." She leaned against the counter, her hip bones sharp even through the expensive fabric. "That's actually something I've been wanting to talk to you about." I didn't respond. The carving knife felt solid in my hand, the blade catching light as I began sectioning the turkey breast into even slices. "You do so much alone, Maggie. It worries me. It worries all of us." "I'm fine. Are you?" Her voice dropped into something that might have sounded like concern if you weren't listening carefully. "When was the last time you had someone over who wasn't family? When did you last go out with friends?" "I see people at church every Sunday." "Sitting in a pew isn't the same as connecting." I set down the knife and turned to face her. "What is this about, Vivian?" Her expression shifted into something softer, more careful. "I care about you. David would have wanted someone to look out for you." The invocation of David's name felt like theft. She said it like she owned him, like her grief carried more weight than mine, because they'd shared blood and I'd only shared a life. David knew I could look out for myself. Before, maybe, but it's been 8 years, Maggie. 8 years of you living in this house alone, barely leaving, barely engaging with the world. That's not healthy. I engage plenty. Do you? She straightened, and something harder entered her tone. Mother says you haven't visited in months. Tyler tried to call you 3 times last week. You didn't answer. I was busy. Doing what? Sitting in this house? Cooking meals for yourself? That's not a life, Maggie. That's existing. The gravy began to bubble. I turned the heat down, stirred it smooth, and said nothing. The army had taught me about strategic silence, about letting other people fill the quiet with their true intentions. "We want to help you." Vivian's voice went gentle again, the shift so practiced it was almost invisible. "We want to make sure you're taken care of." "I don't need taking care of." "Everyone needs someone, Maggie. You've been alone too long. It's starting to show." I looked at her then, really looked. Saw the way her fingers kept touching her pearl necklace, the slight tension in her jaw, the carefully maintained expression that was just a fraction too concerned to be genuine. "What did you do, Vivian?" Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "You're not subtle. You never have been." "What did you do?" She straightened, and for just a moment the mask slipped. What I saw underneath was calculation, the cold assessment of someone who had already made decisions and was now just managing the fallout. I did what family does. I looked out for your best interests. The envelope was still on the counter where I'd left it. I picked it up and held it between us. By filing a conservatorship petition? Vivian didn't flinch. If anything, she seemed relieved that the pretense was over. You found it. Good. I didn't want it to be a surprise. You served me legal papers. On Thanksgiving. In my own home. The timing wasn't ideal, but the situation couldn't wait. Maggie, be reasonable. You're not managing well. Anyone can see that. Anyone? Mother agrees, Tyler agrees, even your church friends have noticed how withdrawn you've become. Which church friends? She waved the question away. That's not the point. The point is that you need help and you're too proud to ask for it. So I'm asking for you. By trying to take control of my life. By trying to protect you. Her voice rose slightly, frustration bleeding through. Do you know what happens to women like you? Alone, vulnerable. They get taken advantage of. They make bad decisions. They lose everything because there's no one to guide them. Women like me. Widows. Women without children, without partners, without support systems. You think you're fine, but you're not seeing clearly. That's exactly why you need someone with perspective to step in. I set the envelope back down, very carefully, very deliberately. Get out of my house. Maggie, get your mother, get your son, and get out. You're proving my point. This emotional reaction, this inability to have a rational conversation, there's nothing to discuss. This is my house. Those are my finances, my life, not yours. It became my business when you stopped being capable of managing it yourself. The words hung between us, sharp and clean. Tyler appeared in the doorway, finally looking up from his phone, sensing the tension even through his digital haze. Mom, what's going on? Vivian didn't take her eyes off me. We're having a discussion about what's best for Aunt Maggie. Don't call it that, I said. Don't dress this up as concern. You filed legal papers to take control of my assets. Call it what it is. Tyler's eyes widened. Whoa, seriously? Your aunt is overreacting. Vivian's tone went cold and flat. She doesn't understand that this is for her own protection. Protection from what? From herself. From bad decisions. From people who might take advantage. I'm standing right here, I said. Stop talking about me like I'm not in the room. Eleanor appeared behind Tyler, leaning heavily on her walking stick. Her face was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. Vivian, perhaps we should— No, Mother, this needs to be said. Vivian turned back to me. You have no one, Maggie. No children, no siblings, no real friends that I can see. When was the last time someone checked on you? When was the last time you had a conversation that wasn't surface-level pleasantries at church? I have a life. You have a routine. There's a difference. And routines aren't enough when you start making mistakes. What mistakes? She gestured vaguely. Financial decisions, isolation, this whole— She waved at the kitchen, the perfectly set table, the meal I'd spent hours preparing. Performance. Cooking for 4 people you barely see, pretending everything is normal, pretending you're fine. I am fine. You're 56 years old, living alone in a house too big for one person, with no plan for the future, no one to help if something goes wrong. That's not fine. That's denial. Tyler shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we should all just— Stay out of this, Tyler. Vivian's voice was sharp. This is adult business. Something in my chest went very cold and very still. It was the feeling I'd had before certain missions, when you knew the terrain was wrong and the intelligence was bad, but you had to move forward anyway because standing still was worse than moving. You don't know anything about my finances. I know enough. I know David left you with a mortgage. I know military pensions aren't generous. I know you've been living on fixed income for years, barely getting by. Is that what you think? It's what I can see. This house is old. You drive a Honda that's got to be pushing 70,000 miles. You shop at Target, not boutiques. Your clothes are— She glanced at my cardigan. Practical. The judgment in that last word was precise as a scalpel. So because I'm not spending money I don't have, you think I'm incompetent? I think you're vulnerable, and I think someone needs to make sure you're protected before it's too late. Eleanor made a small sound, something between a cough and a protest. Vivian ignored her. The hearing is in 3 weeks, Vivian continued. I'm not trying to hurt you, Maggie. I'm trying to help. If you'd just be reasonable about this. Reasonable. The word tasted bitter. You want me to be reasonable about you trying to take control of my life. To take care of you. There's a difference. There really isn't. Tyler looked between us, his phone finally forgotten in his hand. Aunt Maggie, Mom's actually pretty good at this stuff. She handles all of Grandma's finances, and she runs her own business. Maybe it wouldn't be Tyler. I love you, but you're 28 years old, living in your mother's house with no job. I don't need financial advice from you. His face flushed red. Vivian's expression went dangerous. That was uncalled for. Was it? I turned my attention fully to my nephew. When was the last time you paid rent? When did you last file taxes? Have you ever managed a budget? I'm between projects. You're 28 years old and between projects. I was running supply lines in Iraq at your age. Don't tell me what I should do with my life when you haven't figured out your own. Vivian stepped forward, her voice dropping into something hard and final. We're trying to help you. You're too proud to see it, which is exactly why someone else needs to make these decisions for you. Get out. Maggie, get out. The silence that followed was absolute. Even Tyler had gone still, recognizing that something had fractured beyond easy repair. Eleanor spoke quietly from the doorway. Vivian, we should go. No, she needs to understand. Vivian? Eleanor's voice was firmer than I'd heard it in years. We're leaving. For a moment, I thought Vivian would refuse. Her jaw was set, her hands clenched around her expensive bag, everything about her posture screaming resistance. But then something shifted in her expression. Not acceptance, just strategic retreat. Fine, we'll discuss this at the hearing, with a judge who can see the situation clearly. She turned on her red-soled heel and walked out. Tyler followed, still holding his phone, looking lost and embarrassed. Eleanor paused in the doorway. I'm sorry, she said softly. Are you? The question came out harder than I'd intended. Because you signed the petition. Your name is on it. Vivian said, she said you needed help, that you were struggling. Do I look like I'm struggling? Eleanor's gaze traveled across the kitchen, taking in the perfectly cooked meal, the organized space, the clear evidence of someone completely in control of their environment. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't know anymore. I don't know what's true. Then maybe you shouldn't have signed legal documents without finding out. She flinched, but didn't argue, just nodded once and followed her family out the door. I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by a Thanksgiving meal no one would eat. The turkey was perfectly cooked, the sides arranged beautifully, the table set with David's grandmother's china. Everything was exactly as it should have been, except for the envelope on the counter and the hollow feeling in my chest. I picked up the petition and read it again, this time taking notes in the margins. Vivian's declaration was polished, careful. She described herself as deeply concerned. She referenced my service in a way that sounded respectful. Until you paid attention. Multiple deployments. Exposure to combat situations. Documented stress responses. Every sentence leaned gently toward the same conclusion. Not that I was incapable exactly, just that I might be. And that possibility required action. She'd listed my finances as she understood them. The house, estimated value $180,000, though she somehow didn't know I'd paid off the mortgage 3 years ago. A checking account, estimated $15,000, though the real number was triple that. My military pension, $1,800 a month, which was accurate, and a vague reference to additional assets of unknown quantity and provenance. She didn't know. Not really. She was guessing based on surfaces, on appearances, on the assumption that a woman living quietly must be living small. I pulled out my laptop and started a spreadsheet. Column 1, claims in the petition. Column 2, evidence to refute them. Column 3, documentation needed. The Army had trained me for this without ever calling it by name. Preparation is the backbone of response. By the time the sun set, I had a list. I needed medical records to prove cognitive capacity, financial statements to demonstrate sound management, references from people who could testify to my stability. And I needed to find out exactly what Vivian's real situation was, because people didn't file conservatorship petitions without reason, or more specifically, without need. I ate alone that night, not the full Thanksgiving spread. That felt too pointed, too much like defeat. Just a turkey sandwich, simple and efficient, the kind of meal that didn't require ceremony or audience. The house was quiet in a way it hadn't been in months. Usually the silence felt like company, familiar and comfortable. Tonight it felt like evidence. See, Vivian would say, see how alone she is. See how the emptiness has consumed her. But emptiness and solitude weren't the same thing. I learned that in the service, in the long nights between missions when your thoughts were the only conversation you had. You could be surrounded by people and feel empty. You could be alone and feel whole. I knew which one I was. The next morning, I called information for attorneys specializing in military cases. Not family law in general, military specific. I needed someone who understood how easily the word deployment could be weaponized, how readily service could be twisted into liability. The list was shorter than I expected. I wrote down 3 names, cross-checked their credentials, read reviews. One stood out. Gloria Martinez, 61 years old, former military judge, now in private practice. Her website was sparse but professional. No marketing fluff, no emotional appeals, just facts and a phone number. I called at 9 a.m. She answered on the second ring, her voice carrying the kind of efficiency that came from decades of cutting through noise to reach signal. Martinez. My name is Margaret Thompson. I need to retain an attorney for a conservatorship case. Someone's trying to conserve you? My sister-in-law. She filed 3 weeks ago. The hearing is December 18th. There was a pause, the sound of typing. That's fast. Usually these cases take months to develop. Why the rush? You'd have to ask her. I'm asking you. What changed? What made her move now instead of 6 months ago or 6 months from now? The question was sharp, intelligent. I liked her immediately. I don't know, but I intend to find out. Good. Send me the petition. I'll review it and call you back within 24 hours. If I take the case, we move fast. If I don't, I'll refer you to someone who can help. Either way, you'll have answers tomorrow. I sent the PDF before we hung up. Then I went to work. The Veterans Affairs office was a 40-minute drive. A squat building painted institutional beige with 2 small windows and a parking lot that had seen better decades. Inside, the air smelled like old coffee and photocopier toner. The clerk behind the desk looked tired in the specific way people got when they'd processed 1,000 requests exactly like yours. I needed certified copies of my service record. Dates of deployment, commendations, performance evaluations, the stress leave Vivian had mentioned in her filing, and, most importantly, the documentation showing I'd returned to full duty afterward with no restrictions. This'll take about a week, the clerk said. I need it in 3 days. Can't be done. I leaned forward slightly, keeping my voice level and calm. 22 years of service, perfect record. Someone's trying to claim I'm incompetent due to military-related cognitive decline. I need documentation proving otherwise, and I need it before a judge makes decisions based on assumptions instead of facts. The clerk looked up, really looked for the first time. Saw something in my face that made him pause. 3 days is still tight. I know, I'm asking anyway. He studied me for a long moment, then started typing. Come back Thursday afternoon. I'll have what I can. I thanked him and left. Outside, the November sun was weak but pleasant. I sat in my Honda, 68,000 miles, not 70, maintained with religious precision, and made a list of everyone who could speak to my capacity without exaggeration. Colonel James Rodriguez, my last commanding officer, Dr. Patricia Coleman, if I could convince her to do an evaluation, Maria Gonzalez, my accountant, Father Michael O'Brien from St. Mary's. Each one represented a different facet of my life, a different kind of testimony. Together, they would create a picture Vivian couldn't distort. My phone rang. Gloria Martinez. I read the petition, and it's garbage, but it's competent garbage, which means we treat it seriously. What do you need from me? Everything: medical records, financial statements, character references, proof of competent decision-making. We're building a fortress, Thompson. Every brick counts. When do we start? Yesterday. But since time travel isn't an option, how about tomorrow morning? 9 a.m., my office. Bring documentation. The line went dead. I sat in the parking lot and felt something shift in my chest. Not relief. It was too early for that. But the beginning of structure. The sense that the problem had been defined and could therefore be solved. I drove to the bank next. The manager, a woman named Patricia Chen, who'd handled my accounts for 6 years, greeted me with professional warmth. "Mrs. Thompson, what can I do for you?" "I need official statements for all my accounts. Last 10 years certified. And a letter confirming my payment history, mortgages, bills, everything." "That's quite a bit of documentation. May I ask why?" I could have lied, made up something about taxes or estate planning, but honesty seems simpler. "Someone's challenging my financial competence. I need to prove they're wrong." Patricia's expression went carefully neutral. "I see. Well, your accounts are some of the tidiest I manage. I'll have this ready by end of business tomorrow." "Thank you." "Mrs. Thompson?" She paused. "For what it's worth, whoever's challenging you is an idiot." I almost smiled. "I'll be sure to note that in my filing." That night, I opened the safe in my bedroom closet, not because I felt dramatic, but because that's where the important papers lived. Insurance documents, the deed to my house, stock certificates, brokerage statements, everything carefully filed, organized by category and date, the kind of system that made sense and held up under scrutiny. I pulled out the real estate documents first. The house, 1247 Oakwood Drive, purchased in 2006 for $135,000. Current value, according to the most recent appraisal, $425,000. Mortgage paid in full as of March 2022. Singly owned by Margaret Elizabeth Thompson. Then the duplex in Austin, purchased 2012 for $245,000. Current value $680,000. Both units rented. Income $4,200 monthly. Clean tenant history, well-maintained property, solid investment. The cabin in Estes Park, Colorado. Bought 2015 for $180,000. Now worth $520,000 according to recent comparables. Short-term rental through Airbnb, managed by a local company, netting approximately $42,000 annually. And the land in Hill Country, $85,000 in 2017, $340,000 current valuation, undeveloped, held for appreciation, which it was achieving admirably. I laid the documents out on my bed in chronological order. Each one represented a decision, a calculated risk, a moment when I'd chosen to build rather than consume. None of them spectacular, all of them solid. Vivian thought I had a house and a pension. She thought I was barely getting by, living small, vulnerable because I was alone. She didn't know about the retirement account. The TSP I'd contributed to for 22 years, currently sitting at $2.4 million. She didn't know about the investment account at Fidelity, diversified and carefully managed, worth $1.8 million. She didn't know about the scholarship fund I'd established in David's name, $485,000 that had already sent 23 kids to college. Total assets, $7.85 million. I stared at the number, written in my neat handwriting at the bottom of my summary sheet. It looked absurd, like a mistake or a fantasy, but every digit was documented, verified, real. I wasn't wealthy in the way Vivian understood wealth. No designer clothes, no luxury car, no ostentatious displays. But I was secure in a way that mattered more than appearance. I had options. I had freedom. I had built something that couldn't be taken away easily. Except Vivian was trying to take it anyway. I gathered the documents carefully, returned them to the safe, and sat on the edge of my bed. The room was dark except for the streetlight coming through the window, casting familiar shadows across familiar furniture. David's nightstand still held his reading glasses, though he'd been gone 8 years. I'd never moved them, never saw the point. "She's trying to take everything we built," I said to the empty room. "Your sister thinks I need protecting." The silence didn't answer. But I hadn't expected it to. David wasn't here to defend me. Eleanor wasn't going to stand up for me. Even Tyler, who'd at least looked uncomfortable, had signed the petition supporting his mother's claims. I was alone in this, which wasn't the same as being without resources. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thompson, this is Martinez. Thought of something else you need? Get a complete cognitive evaluation, not just a checkup, full neuropsych battery. Expensive and time-consuming, but it'll shut down any claims of diminished capacity. I can recommend someone. Let me know." I texted back. "Make the appointment." 3 dots appeared. Then, "Already did. Wednesday 10 a.m. Dr. Patricia Coleman's office. She's expecting you. Bill goes to me." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We haven't won anything, but we will." The confidence in those 3 words steadied something in me. We will. Not might, not hope to. Will. I set the phone down and looked around my bedroom, at the life I'd built after David died, at the quiet routine Vivian called emptiness, at the solitude she mistook for vulnerability. She thought she understood my situation. She'd looked at the surfaces and drawn conclusions, the way people do when they believe appearance equals reality. But surfaces were just surfaces. What lived underneath, the careful planning, the disciplined saving, the strategic investments, the years of small decisions that accumulated into security, none of that showed in the house I lived in or the car I drove or the clothes I wore. Vivian had made an assumption. She'd filed papers based on that assumption. And she'd done it without checking, without asking, without even considering she might be wrong. That was her mistake. Not the only one, as it turned out, but certainly the first. I turned off the light and lay in the darkness, listening to the house settle around me. Tomorrow I would start building the fortress Gloria mentioned. I would gather evidence, compile documentation, prove competence through the accumulated weight of choices made wisely over decades. But tonight, in the quiet before the real work began, I allowed myself one small moment of something that wasn't quite anger and wasn't quite satisfaction. Vivian wanted to protect me from vulnerability. She wanted to save me from bad decisions. She wanted to take control because she believed I couldn't manage alone. She was going to learn something about assumptions, about what lived beneath quiet surfaces, about the difference between solitude and weakness. She was going to learn what 22 years of military service actually taught a person, and I was going to enjoy teaching her. Gloria Martinez's office occupied the 7th floor of a building that had seen 3 decades of San Antonio business cycles. The elevator creaked on the way up. The hallway carpet showed worn paths where countless clients had walked to and from judgment. Her door was wood with frosted glass, the kind that suggested she'd been here long enough not to care about modern aesthetics. I arrived at 8:55 a.m., carrying a banker's box filled with documentation. Gloria opened the door herself. No receptionist, no assistant, just a woman in her early 60s wearing reading glasses on a chain and a no-nonsense expression. "Thompson, you're early." "Good." Her office was exactly what I expected. Metal filing cabinets lined one wall. A massive oak desk dominated the center, its surface organized into precise zones: current files, reference materials, a laptop older than most smartphones. Law books filled floor-to-ceiling shelves. The only personal touch was a framed photograph of a younger Gloria in military dress uniform, standing at attention, her face carrying the same sharp focus it held now. 26 years Judge Advocate General's Corps, she said, catching my glance. Retired as full bird colonel. Now I take cases that interest me. Does mine interest you? Immensely. Someone trying to conserve a competent adult always interests me. Someone trying to conserve a veteran with a clean record and obvious capacity? That's not interesting, that's insulting. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. I set the box down and sat. Walk me through your sister-in-law, not what she says, what she is. I gave her the facts. Vivian's 2 divorces, the 3 adult children, Tyler being the oldest, the real estate business that looked successful on social media, but had only closed 3 sales in 4 years, the lifestyle that outpaced income by margins that should have been impossible to sustain. Gloria took notes in shorthand, her pen moving with practiced efficiency. So she's leveraged, probably badly, and you're not. Show me. I opened the box and started laying out documents. Bank statements first, 10 years of consistent management, then the retirement account summaries, the real estate deeds, the investment portfolio, the scholarship fund documentation, everything organized chronologically, everything verified by third parties, everything demonstrating exactly what Vivian claimed I lacked: sound financial judgment. Gloria read in silence, her expression never changing. When she finished the last page, she sat back and folded her hands. 7.85 million. Yes. And she thinks you have what? 200,000? At most. So she filed a conservatorship petition to manage assets she didn't know existed, to protect you from incompetence she assumed, based on observations that missed literally millions of dollars of carefully managed wealth. That's accurate. Gloria almost smiled. Thompson, I've seen some monumentally stupid legal actions in my career. This one makes the top 5. Can we win? Win. We can obliterate this so thoroughly that opposing counsel will wish he'd never passed the bar exam. But first, I need to understand motivation. Your sister-in-law isn't just wrong. She's aggressively, comprehensively, documentably wrong. People don't file conservatorships on a whim. The paperwork alone costs thousands. What does she actually need? Money, I assume. How much and for what? I don't know the specifics. Then we find out, because when we walk into that courtroom, I want to know not just what she claims, but why she needs it badly enough to risk this. Gloria pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Here's what happens next. You're getting a complete neuropsychological evaluation with Dr. Patricia Coleman that's already scheduled for Wednesday. She'll spend 3 hours testing your cognitive function, memory, decision-making capacity, everything. It's expensive and exhausting, but when she's done, we'll have a report that makes any claims of diminished capacity look ridiculous. Understood. Next, character references. I need people who can testify to your competence. Not friends saying nice things, professionals who've observed your judgment in action. Who's your commanding officer? Retired. Colonel James Rodriguez at Fort Sam Houston. Still local? Yes. Get me a meeting with him this week. Who does your taxes? Maria Gonzalez, Gonzalez and Associates downtown. I'll contact her today. Anyone else who's seen your financial management up close? My bank manager, Patricia Chen. I've worked with her for 6 years. Gloria wrote rapidly. Good, we're building a wall of credibility. Every brick matters. Now the harder part. We need to investigate your sister-in-law's financial situation. Not speculation, documentation. I'm hiring a private investigator. He'll pull public records, court filings, business registrations, everything that's legally accessible. If she's in financial trouble, we need to prove it. If her timing isn't coincidental, we need to demonstrate that. How long will that take? Week at most. He's thorough. She set down her pen and looked at me directly. Here's what you need to understand about conservatorship cases. They're designed to protect vulnerable people. Judges take them seriously because the stakes are high. You're asking the court to remove someone's fundamental rights. That cuts both ways. If the petitioner is wrong, the court tends to react poorly. If the petitioner is wrong and has ulterior motives, that's when judges start asking questions about sanctions, costs, and referrals to the state bar. You think it'll go that far? I think if we present this properly, your sister-in-law is going to have a very bad day in court. But we can't just show she's wrong. We have to show why she was wrong. Incompetence or malice. Either way, she loses. But one is defensible and one destroys her credibility permanently. I prefer the second option. I left Gloria's office at 11 a.m. with a list of tasks and a timeline that felt simultaneously urgent and manageable. First stop, Fort Sam Houston. Colonel Rodriguez had agreed to meet me during his lunch break at the base commissary. The drive took 40 minutes through familiar streets. I'd made this trip countless times during my service years, back when the base was my workplace instead of a memory. The guard at the gate checked my retired military ID, waved me through, and I found myself in a landscape that hadn't changed much. Same bland architecture, same manicured lawns, same sense of purpose that permeated everything about military installations. Rodriguez was already seated when I arrived. eating a sandwich at a table near the window. He'd aged since I'd last seen him. More gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes. But he still carried himself with the ramrod posture of someone who'd spent decades under scrutiny. Thompson. He stood, shook my hand firmly. Been a while. 2 years, sir. Don't call me sir, I'm retired too. He gestured to the chair across from him. Your lawyer called this morning. Conservatorship petition, that's some serious business. I gave him the summary, clinical and factual, the way he would have expected during my service. He listened without interrupting, his expression hardening as I detailed Vivian's claims. She said you have diminished capacity due to military service. That's the assertion. Based on what evidence? Stress leave I took 4 years ago. 2 weeks. His jaw tightened. You took that leave after 16 months of continuous deployment rotation. Your unit psychiatrist recommended it. You returned to full duty with 0 restrictions. I signed off on that personally. I know. This is insulting, not just to you, to every service member who's ever had the sense to recognize when they need a break. He pulled out his phone and typed rapidly. I'm writing a letter. Today. Your lawyer will have it by close of business. And if she needs me to testify, I'll clear my schedule. Thank you, Colonel. Don't thank me. This is basic decency. Someone's trying to weaponize your service record against you. That's not just wrong legally, it's morally bankrupt. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. Off the record, your sister-in-law better hope I'm not in that courtroom, because I've got 28 years of experience explaining to people exactly how wrong they are, and I still enjoy it. From Fort Sam, Houston, I drove directly to Dr. Coleman's office for the evaluation Gloria had scheduled. The building was modern medical professional. Glass and steel, everything designed to project competence and calm. The waiting room held abstract art and uncomfortable chairs. A receptionist who looked barely 20 checked me in without meeting my eyes. Dr. Coleman emerged at exactly 10 a.m. She was in her mid-60s, wearing a cardigan over a blouse, her gray hair pulled into a practical bun. Her handshake was professional, but not warm. Mrs. Thompson, this way. Her office was more comfortable than the waiting room. Leather chairs, soft lighting, bookshelves filled with psychological texts and journals. She gestured to a chair across from her desk and pulled out a file. Your attorney explained the situation. Conservatorship petition claiming cognitive decline. Is that accurate? Yes. And you need documentation proving otherwise. That's the goal. She nodded, making notes. We'll start with background, then move to testing. The full battery takes about 3 hours. It's not painful, but it is tiring. Questions will feel repetitive. That's intentional. I'm looking for patterns, consistency, areas of strength and weakness. Everyone has both. The question is whether yours impair your ability to function independently. The testing began with what seemed like simple questions. Orientation. What day is it? What year? Where are we? Then memory exercises. She read lists of words and asked me to recall them immediately, then again after 15 minutes. Numbers to repeat backward, stories to summarize, patterns to identify. Then came spatial reasoning, puzzles to assemble within time limits, images to study and reproduce, questions about what I'd do in various hypothetical situations, some practical, some absurd, all designed to assess judgment under different conditions. By hour 2, my concentration was flagging. Dr. Coleman noticed, but didn't slow down. She moved to executive function tests, planning tasks, organizing information, solving problems with multiple steps, then emotional regulation scenarios, financial decision-making exercises, assessments of my understanding of abstract concepts. At 2 hours 40 minutes, she called a break. I stood, stretched, drank the water she offered, and tried not to think about how exhausting this was proving. How am I doing? No feedback until we're done. But you're doing fine with the process itself, which matters. She checked her notes. One more section, about 40 minutes. The final portion focused on functional capacity. Could I manage medications, handle financial transactions, understand legal documents, make medical decisions? She presented scenarios and asked me to walk through my reasoning. Not just what I'd decide, but why. What factors I'd consider. What outcomes I'd prioritize. When it finally ended at 1:15 p.m., I felt like I'd run a marathon. Not physically exhausted, mentally wrung out, every cognitive resource depleted. Dr. Coleman walked me back to the waiting area. I'll have a preliminary report to your attorney by Friday. Full analysis with recommendations will take another week. But off the record? Yes? Whoever claimed you have diminished cognitive capacity either didn't bother to observe you or has a different agenda. Your performance today was excellent for any age, let alone 56. I'll document that thoroughly. I drove home slowly, taking surface streets instead of the highway, giving myself time to decompress. The house was exactly as I'd left it, clean, organized, empty, in the way that usually felt comfortable, but today just felt hollow. My phone buzzed. A text from Gloria. Rodriguez sent letter, it's nuclear. Also, investigator has preliminary info on your sister-in-law. Can you come by tomorrow morning? 9 a.m. I replied, I'll be there. That night I made dinner. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, brown rice. The kind of meal that required attention but not creativity. While I ate, I opened my laptop and searched for information about Vivian's business. Sinclair Properties LLC had a website that looked expensive and professional. Photos of luxury homes, testimonials that sounded generic, a mission statement about serving San Antonio's most discerning clients. Vivian's bio described her as a premier real estate professional with 15 years of experience and a commitment to excellence. I clicked through to listings. Only 2 properties were currently active, a condo downtown and a small house in a marginal neighborhood. Nothing in the price range suggested by the website's aesthetic. Then I searched public records. The state business registry showed Sinclair Properties Incorporated in 2018. Annual revenue reports were vague, but suggested the business pulled in around $800,000 annually. Impressive until you considered overhead, commission structures, and operating costs. I found the court records next. 2 liens filed against Sinclair Properties in the past 18 months. One from a title company for unpaid services. Another from a commercial landlord for back rent on office space. Both eventually satisfied, but their existence told a story about cash flow problems. Then Vivian's personal records. A divorce filing from 2020, her second. Property settlement records showing she'd kept the house but taken on debt. Credit reports weren't accessible without permission, but I could see defaults on business loans, late payment notices that had become public record, and a general pattern that suggested someone living well beyond their means. The timing was the most telling detail. The bank notice threatening foreclosure came October 8th. The conservatorship petition was filed October 15th. 7 days between crisis and action. I took screenshots of everything public record, organized them chronologically, and sent them to Gloria with a note. Found these. Not sure if they help, but the timeline is interesting. She replied within minutes. Very interesting. Investigator is finding more. See you tomorrow. Wednesday morning brought rain, the gray, persistent kind that made San Antonio feel more melancholy than usual. I arrived at Gloria's office with coffee for both of us, a peace offering for the early hour. She accepted the cup with a nod and gestured to a manila folder on her desk. That's the preliminary investigation. It's illuminating. I opened the folder. Inside were copies of documents I'd found, plus others I hadn't. Business bank statements obtained through subpoena, loan applications, credit applications, lease agreements, and a breakdown of Vivian's financial situation that was considerably worse than I'd imagined. Total liabilities, $550,000. Total liquid assets, approximately $40,000. The gap between those numbers was a crisis waiting to happen, or more accurately, a crisis actively happening. The foreclosure notice is real, Gloria said. Her mortgage lender filed preliminary paperwork last month. She's 3 payments behind, and the grace period ends mid-December. That's 4 days before our hearing. So, if she loses the house, she needs another source of funds immediately. Winning conservatorship over you would give her legal authority to manage your assets, which means access to liquidity she desperately needs. Gloria leaned back in her chair. Here's what I think happened. She knew about your house. Probably knew it was paid off, which means equity. She assumed that was your primary asset, maybe estimated $200,000. Figured if she could gain conservatorship, She could take out a loan against your property, use it to solve her immediate problems, and repay it over time. From her perspective, it's not stealing. It's borrowing from family in a crisis. Without asking, because asking would mean admitting the crisis. This way she solves the problem, looks like a concerned relative, and avoids having to explain where the money went. Gloria tapped the folder. The issue is she didn't do basic research, didn't check property records, didn't investigate your actual financial situation, just made assumptions based on surface observations. Can we use this? Absolutely, but carefully. We don't lead with it. That looks like we're attacking her instead of defending you. We let her build her case. Let her talk about concern and protection. Then when it's our turn, we demonstrate that your assets are far beyond what she imagined, that you've managed them flawlessly for decades, and, oh, by the way, here's evidence suggesting the petitioner might have personal motivations that don't align with your best interests. That'll destroy her credibility. That's the goal. Judges don't like being used. If she filed this petition as a scheme to access money she needs, the judge will eviscerate her, and her attorney should have caught this before filing. That puts him at risk too. Gloria pulled out another document, Colonel Rodriguez's letter. I read it slowly. It was 3 pages of systematic demolition of every claim Vivian had made about my service record, my stress leave, and my capacity. His language was precise, professional, and devastating. That's a nuclear weapon in document form, Gloria said. We're saving it for the right moment. Thursday. I collected my service records from the VA office. The clerk recognized me when I walked in and handed over a sealed envelope without making me wait. Everything you asked for, plus some extras I thought might help. Performance reports, commendations, the whole 9 yards. Anyone says you're not competent, they're either lying or stupid. Thank you. Ma'am? He hesitated. My sister went through something similar. Family tried to take control when she was perfectly capable. Judge shut it down hard. I'm hoping that happens for you too. The records were comprehensive. 22 years of service compressed into 60 pages of documentation. Every evaluation was spotless. Every fitness report showed exemplary performance. The stress leave was barely a footnote. 2 weeks in a career measured in decades. I spent Thursday evening organizing everything for Gloria. Color-coded tabs, chronological arrangement, summary sheet highlighting key points. By the time I finished, it was past midnight. I fell asleep at the kitchen table, waking at 2 a.m. with paper stuck to my cheek and my neck stiff from the awkward angle. Friday morning brought Dr. Coleman's preliminary report. Gloria called me the moment she received it. Thompson, this is a gift. Coleman's being diplomatic in her language, but the substance is unambiguous. I'm reading you selected excerpts. Patient demonstrates cognitive function well above age norms across all tested domains. Memory, executive function, judgment, and decision-making capacity all fall within superior ranges. No evidence of cognitive decline, impairment, or diminished capacity. Patient's ability to manage personal and financial affairs is not only intact, but exemplary. She said that verbatim. Then she adds a paragraph noting that claims of incompetence would require evidence of actual impairment, which is not only absent, but contradicted by observed performance. Thompson, she's basically calling bullshit on the entire petition without using those exact words. When do we file? Monday. We're submitting our formal response with all supporting documentation. That gives the other side 10 days to prepare for the hearing. Not much time, but they're the ones who rushed this timeline. That weekend, I allowed myself something I rarely did, a break from preparation. Saturday morning, I attended Mass at St. Mary's. Father O'Brien caught me after the service, his round face creased with concern. Margaret, I heard about the legal trouble. Is there anything I can do? I might need you to write a letter about my involvement with the church, my volunteer work. Done. I'll have it to your attorney by Monday. And Margaret? He squeezed my hand. Whatever they're claiming, it's nonsense. You're one of the most capable, stable people in this congregation. I'll say that in writing and under oath if necessary. Sunday. I drove to the cemetery. David's grave was in a section reserved for veterans, marked by a simple granite headstone. I brought fresh flowers, white roses, his favorite. Your sister is causing problems, I told the empty air above the grave. Trying to take everything we built together. Says I can't manage alone. The wind moved through the trees. Birds called in the distance. The world continued without waiting for answers from the dead. I'm handling it. Gloria's good. The documentation is solid. But I wanted you to know, in case... I stopped, the thought incomplete. In case what? In case some part of him could still hear? In case talking to stone and grass somehow mattered? I miss you, I said finally. Every day. But I'm not broken. I'm not lost. I'm not whatever Vivian thinks I am. You taught me how to stand. I'm still standing. I stayed until the sun was directly overhead, then drove home through neighborhoods I knew by heart. Past the elementary school where David had coached Little League for 3 summers. Past the park where we used to walk evenings before his late shifts. Past the coffee shop where he'd proposed. Awkward and earnest and perfect. The memories were everywhere. But they didn't hurt the way they used to. Time had softened the edges, turned grief into something more like background music, always present but no longer overwhelming. At home, I reviewed the case file one more time, not because anything had changed, but because preparation was its own form of meditation. Every document in its proper place, every argument supported by evidence, every potential question anticipated and answered. Vivian thought I was vulnerable. She'd built a narrative around my solitude, my quiet life, my reluctance to engage on her terms. What she'd missed was the difference between isolation and independence, between silence and strength, between appearing simple and actually being prepared. Monday morning, Gloria filed our response. She sent me a copy with a note. This is comprehensive, devastating, and professionally courteous. Their attorney is going to have a very uncomfortable conversation with his client. I read through it slowly. The response didn't just refute Vivian's claims, it systematically destroyed them with documentation. Every assertion of incompetence met with proof of exemplary management. Every suggestion of vulnerability countered with evidence of deliberate choice. Every implication of cognitive decline demolished by professional evaluation. And tucked near the end, almost as an afterthought, a paragraph noting that while we didn't question the petitioner's stated motivations, the court might be interested in the timing of the filing relative to the petitioner's own financial circumstances, which we would be happy to detail if relevant to the proceedings. That's a warning shot, Gloria explained when I called. We're telling them we know about her situation and we're willing to make it part of the record. Gives them a chance to withdraw before we go nuclear. Will they? Probably not. Too much pride, too much need, or too much denial about how bad this is going to get. But we offered the exit ramp. What they do with it is their choice. Tuesday brought a phone call from Eleanor. I saw her name on the screen and almost didn't answer. Then curiosity won. Hello, Eleanor. Margaret. Her voice was thin, uncertain. I wanted to talk to you before the hearing. All right. Vivian says you're fighting the conservatorship. I'm defending myself against a baseless petition. She says she's just trying to help. Is that what she told you when she asked you to sign the papers? Silence. Then, she said you were struggling, that you weren't managing well, that someone needed to step in before things got worse. And you believed her without checking? Without asking me? You're always so distant, Margaret. You never share what's happening in your life. How was I supposed to know? By asking, by calling, by treating me like an adult capable of speaking for myself instead of accepting Vivian's interpretation. More silence. I could hear her breathing, shallow and quick, the sound of someone realizing they'd made a mistake, but not ready to admit it fully. I don't want this to go to court, she said finally. I don't want the family fighting. Then you should have thought about that before signing legal documents trying to take away my rights. Margaret, please. The hearing is December 18th. If you want to help, tell the truth about what you actually know regarding my competence, not what Vivian told you to think, what you've observed yourself. I ended the call before she could respond. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of confrontation. I'd spent so many years being polite, accommodating, trying to maintain family peace. And where had it gotten me? Here, defending my right to exist independently because someone decided silence meant weakness. Wednesday brought Tyler. He showed up at my door unannounced, looking uncomfortable in jeans and a hoodie, his usual confidence absent. "Aunt Maggie, can we talk?" I considered saying no, then stepped aside to let him in. He stood in my living room, hands shoved in his pockets, not quite meeting my eyes. "Mom says you're making this harder than it needs to be. Your mother filed papers trying to control my life. There's no version of this that's easy. She's just worried about you." "Is she, or is she worried about herself?" He looked up sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means your mother is in significant financial trouble, and the timing of this petition is very convenient for someone who needs access to assets." "That's not— Mom wouldn't—" He stopped, the denial dying on his lips. "She's having some business issues, but that's not why she filed." "How do you know?" "Because she told me." "And you believe her? Tyler, when was the last time your mother told you something difficult about herself? When did she ever admit she needed help?" He shifted his weight, uncomfortable. "She's proud. She's desperate. There's a difference." I moved to the window, looked out at the street. "I don't blame you for supporting her. She's your mother. But you signed papers claiming I'm incompetent without asking a single question about whether that was true. You took her word and added your name to something that could fundamentally change my life. I didn't think it would be this serious." "What did you think would happen? I'd just accept it? Smile and thank you for taking away my autonomy?" "I thought—" He trailed off, then started again. "I thought you'd be relieved, that you'd be glad someone was handling things so you didn't have to." I turned to face him. "Tyler, I've managed million-dollar budgets under combat conditions. I've made decisions where lives depended on getting it right. I've navigated bureaucracies, built investment portfolios, and handled every crisis life has thrown at me for 56 years. What on earth made you think I wanted someone else handling things?" "Mom said you were overwhelmed." "Your mother lied, or at minimum, she convinced herself of something convenient without bothering to verify it was true." He sank onto the couch, looking younger than his 28 years. "What's going to happen at the hearing?" "I'm going to prove I'm completely capable of managing my own affairs. Your mother is going to have a very bad day, and you're going to learn something about making assumptions." "Aunt Maggie, I'm sorry. I should have talked to you first." "Yes, you should have." I sat in the chair across from him. "Tyler, you're not a bad person, but you're lazy, intellectually lazy. You take the easy path, the comfortable assumption, the version of reality that requires the least effort to believe. That works fine until it doesn't. This is it not working." "What do I do?" "Show up at the hearing, listen to the evidence, and then decide if you want to keep supporting someone who used you to try to steal my independence, or if you want to start thinking for yourself." He left without saying anything else. I watched him walk to his car, a BMW his mother had probably co-signed for, and drive away. I felt no satisfaction in the conversation, no victory, just the tired recognition that sometimes teaching means breaking things before you can rebuild them better. The next 10 days passed in a blur of final preparations. Gloria worked 18-hour days refining our presentation, anticipating arguments, preparing responses. I reviewed my testimony until I could recite it in my sleep. We practiced cross-examination, with Gloria playing the role of hostile attorney, asking every uncomfortable question she could imagine. "They're going to focus on your solitude. Make it sound pathological. I'll explain that solitude is a choice, not a symptom." They'll bring up the stress leave again. I'll reference Colonel Rodriguez's letter and Dr. Coleman's evaluation. They'll try to paint you as eccentric, unusual, not quite normal. Normal is overrated. I'll stick with competent. 3 days before the hearing, Vivian's attorney sent a settlement offer. The proposal suggested I voluntarily agree to quarterly financial reviews with a family oversight committee consisting of Vivian and Eleanor. In exchange, they'd withdraw the conservatorship petition. Gloria called me immediately. "They're trying to save face. They know they're going to lose, so they're proposing something that sounds reasonable, but still gives them access to your financial information." "No." "That's what I told them. Just wanted to confirm you're comfortable going to trial." "Completely." "Good. Because we're going to win, and we're going to win so decisively that they'll think twice before trying something like this again." The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. not from anxiety, from anticipation. I lay in bed watching shadows move across the ceiling, thinking about the moment when the truth would finally be presented in full, when Vivian would realize exactly how wrong she'd been, when the judge would see the gap between her assumptions and reality. At 4 a.m., I gave up on sleep and made coffee, sat at the kitchen table reviewing my notes one last time. Everything was ready. Documentation organized, witnesses prepared, strategy refined. David's photograph sat on the shelf across from me. Our wedding day, both of us young and hopeful and convinced we had forever. I'd carried that photograph through deployments, through his death, through 8 years of rebuilding a life that made sense without him. Tomorrow, I prove I'm still standing, I told the photograph, that everything we built together is still solid, that I kept my promises even after you couldn't keep yours. The house was silent. The morning was still hours away, but I felt ready, not just prepared, but certain. Certain of my choices, my competence, my right to live on my own terms. Vivian had made a mistake, not just in filing the petition, but in fundamentally misunderstanding who I was. She'd looked at my quiet life and seen emptiness, looked at my independence and seen vulnerability, looked at my reluctance to engage on her terms and seen weakness. She was about to learn the difference between appearance and reality, between silence and strength, between being alone and being self-sufficient. And I was going to enjoy watching her education unfold. The Bazar County Courthouse looked exactly like every other government building constructed in the 1970s. Concrete and glass, trying to project authority, but achieving only institutional blandness. I arrived at 8:30 a.m., 30 minutes before the hearing. Gloria was already there, standing near the security checkpoint with a leather briefcase and an expression that suggested she'd slept well and was looking forward to what came next. Ready? Yes? Good. Remember, short answers, no embellishment. They want you emotional or defensive. Give them neither. We passed through security and took the elevator to the 4th floor. The hallway outside courtroom 4C held scattered groups of people waiting for various proceedings. Vivian stood near the far end with her attorney, Harold Finch, a man in his mid-50s wearing an expensive suit, and an expression suggesting he'd recently realized this case wasn't what he'd been told it was. Vivian saw me and her face tightened. She'd dressed carefully, a cream St. John suit, the Hermes bag, pearl jewelry that caught the fluorescent light. Her hair was styled in soft waves. She looked like someone going to a business lunch, not someone about to face the consequences of spectacular miscalculation. Eleanor sat on a bench nearby, clutching her walking stick, wearing the same purple floral dress from Thanksgiving. Tyler stood against the wall, scrolling his phone, studiously avoiding looking in my direction. The bailiff opened the courtroom doors at 8:55. We filed in, Vivian's party on the left, Gloria and I on the right, the gallery slowly filling with courthouse regulars and a few faces I didn't recognize. The room smelled like old carpet and air conditioning. The judge's bench dominated the front, the witness stand to its right, everything arranged to channel attention toward authority. At 9 a.m. precisely, the bailiff called. All rise, the Honorable Angela Rivera presiding. Judge Rivera entered from a side door. She was 59 according to the research I'd done, Latina, with 25 years on the bench and a reputation for being smart, fair, and having absolutely no patience for wasted time. Her gray hair was cut short and professional. Her expression was neutral, giving nothing away as she settled into her seat. Please be seated. Case number 2025 CV 08847. Vivian Sinclair petitioning for conservatorship over Margaret Thompson. Finch stood. Harold Finch for the petitioner, Your Honor. Gloria stood. Gloria Martinez for the respondent, Your Honor. Judge Rivera adjusted her reading glasses and opened the file before her. I've reviewed the initial petition and the response. This is a hearing to determine whether conservatorship is warranted. Mr. Finch, you may proceed. Finch moved to the podium. His presentation was smooth, practiced. Your Honor, this case is about protecting a vulnerable woman from potential harm. Ms. Sinclair brings this petition not out of malice or self-interest, but from genuine concern for her sister-in-law, who has shown worrying signs of withdrawal and isolation following the death of her husband 8 years ago. He outlined Vivian's claims systematically: my living alone, my limited social contact, my refusal of family involvement, the stress leave from military service, the pattern, as he described it, of someone slowly retreating from engagement with the world. The petitioner seeks only to ensure that Ms. Thompson has appropriate oversight and support, not to control her life, but to protect it. Judge Rivera's pen moved across her notepad. Her expression revealed nothing. "Call your first witness, Mr. Finch." Vivian stood and walked to the witness stand. The bailiff swore her in. She sat with perfect posture, hands folded in her lap, the picture of concerned respectability. Finch guided her through questions designed to establish her relationship to me, her observations over the years, her growing worry about my well-being. "When did you first become concerned about your sister-in-law's condition?" "It's been gradual. After David died, Margaret retreated. At first I thought it was normal grief, but as years passed, she became more isolated. She stopped attending family gatherings, stopped responding to calls, lived alone in that house I'm not even sure what, just existing." "Did you try to reach out?" "Many times. I invited her to holidays, offered to help with financial planning, suggested she might benefit from companionship. She refused everything, said she was fine, but clearly she wasn't." "What made you think she wasn't fine?" "The isolation, mainly. No one should live that way, completely alone, no friends, no social life. It's not healthy. And when I tried to discuss financial matters with her, she became defensive, refused to consider my advice." "You have experience in financial management?" "I run a successful real estate business. I manage my mother's finances. I understand these things. Margaret doesn't. She's a veteran, which I respect enormously. But military service doesn't prepare you for complex financial decisions in civilian life." Judge Rivera looked up at that. Her pen paused. Finch, perhaps sensing he'd struck a wrong note, moved quickly to the next question. "Did you consult with your mother before filing this petition?" "Of course. Mother has known Margaret for decades. She shares my concerns." "And what does your mother observe?" "That Margaret has become unreachable, distant, unwilling to engage with family or accept help." "In your professional opinion, does your sister-in-law need financial guidance?" Gloria stood. "Objection. The witness isn't qualified to offer professional opinions on financial capacity." Judge Rivera nodded. "Sustained. Mr. Finch, stick to observations." Finch adjusted his approach. "Based on what you've observed, do you believe your sister-in-law would benefit from assistance managing her affairs?" "Yes, absolutely. Before she makes a mistake she can't recover from." "Thank you. No further questions." Gloria stood and approached the witness stand. Her expression remained neutral, professional. No hostility, no dramatics. Just precision. "Ms. Sinclair, you stated you manage your mother's finances. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And you run a real estate business?" "Yes." "Sinclair Properties. How long have you been in real estate?" "Since 2018. 7 years." "And how many properties has your company sold in that time?" Vivian hesitated. "I don't have exact numbers." "Approximately?" "Perhaps a dozen." 12 properties in 7 years. The market has been challenging." "I see. And your business revenue, what was it last year?" Finch stood. "Objection relevance." Gloria turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the petitioner is asking this court to grant her control over the respondent's assets based on her claimed financial expertise. Her own financial management is directly relevant to whether she's qualified for that role." Judge Rivera considered. "I'll allow it. Answer the question, Ms. Sinclair." Vivian's jaw tightened. "Around $800,000 in gross revenue." "And net income after expenses?" "I'm not sure of the exact figure. But you file taxes, correct? You must know approximately what you net." "Perhaps 40,000. 40,000 on 800,000 gross revenue. That's a 5% margin. Is that typical in real estate?" "Every business has overhead." "I'm asking if 5% is typical." "It varies." Gloria moved to the defense table and picked up a document. "Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence a financial analysis of the petitioner's business. She handed copies to the bailiff, who distributed them to the judge and Finch. Ms. Sinclair, according to public records, your company currently has 2 liens filed against it. One from a title company for $23,000 in unpaid fees. Another from a commercial landlord for $18,000 in back rent. Are those figures accurate? Vivian's face flushed. Those are being resolved. But they exist. Temporarily. You also have personal debts, correct? Credit cards, business loans? Everyone has some debt. How much? Finch stood. Your Honor, this is harassment. The petitioner's finances aren't on trial here. Gloria turned to face him. Your Honor, the petitioner is asking for authority over assets worth millions of dollars. Her ability to manage money responsibly is absolutely on trial. Judge Rivera's eyebrows rose slightly. Millions? Yes, Your Honor, as we'll demonstrate. The judge looked at Vivian with new interest. I'll allow the question. Ms. Sinclair, what are your total current debts? Vivian's hands gripped the arms of the witness chair. I don't know exactly. Approximately. Perhaps 400,000. 400,000. Judge Rivera wrote this down. And your assets? My house, my business. Net assets. What do you own free and clear? Silence. Vivian looked at Finch, who was studying his notes intently, offering no help. Not much at the moment, but that's temporary. The real estate market is cyclical. Gloria cut in. Ms. Sinclair, did you receive a foreclosure notice on your home last month? That's been handled. That's not what I asked. Did you receive a foreclosure notice? Yes. From your mortgage lender stating you were 3 payments behind? Yes, but I've made arrangements. When did you receive this notice? I don't remember exactly. October 8th, is that correct? If you say so. And when did you file this conservatorship petition? Vivian's lips pressed into a thin line. Mid-October. October 15th. 7 days after receiving notice, your home might be foreclosed. Is that accurate? The timing is coincidental. Is it? Gloria let the question hang. Ms. Sinclair, before filing this petition, did you research the respondent's actual financial situation? I know she has the house and her pension. Did you check property records? No. Did you review her account statements? She wouldn't share them. Did you ask? Vivian's hands clenched. She's not exactly open about these things. So you filed a petition to take control of her assets without verifying what those assets were or how they were being managed? I could see she needed help. Based on what evidence? Her behavior, her isolation, her refusal to engage. But not based on any actual financial mismanagement. She's not equipped to handle complex decisions. And you are? With your company's 5% margins and your personal debt of $400,000? Finch stood. Your Honor, counsel is being argumentative. Sustained. Move on, Ms. Martinez. Gloria nodded. No further questions. Vivian returned to her seat, her face pale, her earlier composure shattered. Finch called Eleanor next. The old woman moved slowly to the stand, leaning heavily on her walking stick. Finch's questions were gentle, designed to elicit concern rather than accusation. Eleanor described me as distant, uncommunicative, isolated. She said she worried about my living alone, about what would happen if I had a medical emergency, about whether I was eating properly or maintaining the house. Have you visited her home recently? Not in months. She doesn't invite me. When you do visit, what do you observe? It's very clean, very organized, almost too organized, like she's trying to control everything because she can't control her life. Gloria's cross-examination was brief. Mrs. Thompson, you stated the house is clean and organized? Yes. You mentioned concern about whether Margaret eats properly. Have you ever observed her looking malnourished or unwell? No, but have you ever observed any evidence of financial mismanagement, bills left unpaid, creditors calling, that sort of thing? I don't know about her finances. But you signed a petition claiming she can't manage them. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. What Vivian said isn't evidence, Mrs. Thompson. What have you personally observed that suggests your daughter-in-law is incompetent? Silence. Nothing? No further questions. Tyler was called next. He looked uncomfortable taking the stand, his usual digital confidence absent in the analog world of legal proceedings. Finch asked about his observations of me. Tyler described me as closed off, unwilling to engage with younger family members, stuck in old ways of thinking. Do you think your aunt needs help managing modern financial tools? I mean, probably. She's from a different generation. She doesn't really understand tech, investment apps, that kind of thing. Gloria stood for cross-examination. Mr. Sinclair, you're 28 years old, correct? Yes. Do you currently live with your mother? Yeah, but that's temporary. How long have you lived with her? A couple years. Do you pay rent? His face reddened. We have an arrangement. What kind of arrangement? I help around the house. But you don't pay rent? Not exactly. Do you have a job currently? I'm between projects. What was your last job? I did some freelance social media consulting. When? Last year. So you haven't had income in over a year? I've had some gigs. Regular income? Not exactly. Have you ever managed a household budget? I mean, I've handled my own money. What money? You just said you haven't had regular income in over a year. Tyler shifted in his seat. This isn't about me. You testified that my client doesn't understand modern finance, but you're 28, unemployed, living with your mother, and by your own admission don't manage a budget. On what basis are you qualified to judge anyone's financial competence? I just meant... No further questions. Tyler practically fled the witness stand. Finch stood. Your Honor, the petitioner rests. Judge Rivera looked at Gloria. Ms. Martinez? The defense calls Dr. Patricia Coleman. Coleman entered the courtroom with professional efficiency. After being sworn in, she settled into the witness chair and folded her hands calmly. Gloria approached. Dr. Coleman, please state your credentials for the court. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist with 35 years of experience, board certified in neuropsychology. I specialize in cognitive capacity evaluations. Did you evaluate the respondent, Margaret Thompson? Yes. On December 10th, I conducted a comprehensive neuropsychological evaluation lasting approximately 3 hours. What did that evaluation consist of? A full battery of tests assessing cognitive function, memory, executive function, judgment, decision-making capacity, and functional abilities relevant to independent living. And your findings? Dr. Coleman pulled out a bound report. Ms. Thompson's performance across all domains was not only within normal ranges, but significantly above age-based norms. Her cognitive function is exceptional. Memory, both short and long-term, shows no signs of impairment. Executive function, the ability to plan, organize, and execute complex tasks, is superior. Decision-making capacity, particularly regarding financial matters, is intact and demonstrates sophisticated understanding. In your professional opinion, does Ms. Thompson require a conservator? Absolutely not. She shows no signs of cognitive decline, impairment, or diminished capacity. Any claim that she cannot manage her own affairs is not supported by objective evidence. Could her military service have caused cognitive issues? Military service can sometimes result in traumatic brain injury or PTSD-related cognitive symptoms. However, Ms. Thompson shows no evidence of either. Her stress leave, which I reviewed in her medical records, was a preventive measure, exactly the kind of self-aware decision-making that demonstrates competence, not its absence. Thank you, doctor. Finch stood for cross-examination. Dr. Coleman, your evaluation was only 3 hours. Can you really assess someone's full capacity in that time? 3 hours is standard for comprehensive neuropsychological evaluation. It's sufficient to identify impairments if they exist. But you only saw her once. What if she was having a particularly good day? The tests I administered aren't susceptible to temporary variations. They measure underlying cognitive architecture, not mood-dependent performance. Additionally, her medical history shows consistent high functioning over decades. Could someone with diminished capacity potentially perform well on tests in a controlled environment? Not on this battery. These assessments are specifically designed to detect even subtle impairments. Ms. Thompson showed none. But she lives alone. Isolated? Living alone isn't a symptom of cognitive decline. It's a lifestyle choice. Many highly functional people live independently. The question isn't whether she has company, it's whether she can manage her life. All evidence indicates she can. Remarkably well. Finch sat down, clearly recognizing he was only reinforcing the defense's position. Gloria called Colonel Rodriguez next. He entered in dress uniform, his bearing parade ground perfect despite retirement. After being sworn in, he fixed the courtroom with the kind of attention that made people sit straighter. Gloria's questions established his credentials and his history with me. Then she asked, "Colonel, the petition references Sergeant Thompson's stress leave. Can you explain the circumstances?" "Certainly. Sergeant Thompson completed 16 consecutive months of deployment rotation, multiple high-stress assignments with minimal downtime. Her unit psychiatrist noted early signs of fatigue and recommended precautionary leave. She took 2 weeks, attended counseling sessions, and returned to full duty with 0 restrictions. Her performance evaluations following the leave were exemplary." Is stress leave common? It's increasingly recognized as a best practice. We've learned that acknowledging stress before it becomes crisis is a sign of strength, not weakness. Sergeant Thompson's decision to take that leave showed exactly the kind of sound judgment the petitioner claims she lacks. Did you ever observe anything suggesting diminished capacity? The opposite. Sergeant Thompson managed complex logistics under combat conditions. She supervised personnel, coordinated resources worth millions of dollars, made real-time decisions where lives depended on accuracy. If she were incompetent, people would have died. None did. Her record is spotless. "Thank you, Colonel." Finch approached cautiously. "Colonel Rodriguez, you respect Sergeant Thompson?" "Immensely. Might that cloud your judgment about her current capacity?" "My judgment is based on documented performance over 2 decades. Records don't have emotions. They just show results. Hers are exemplary. But military competence doesn't necessarily translate to civilian life. Are you suggesting that someone capable of managing million-dollar budgets under enemy fire somehow can't balance a checkbook in peacetime? Because that's insulting to every veteran in this country." His voice hadn't risen, but the courtroom felt the force of it. Finch retreated. No further questions. Gloria called Maria Gonzalez, my accountant. Maria testified about 12 years of managing my taxes, my consistently organized records, my conservative but intelligent investment choices. She submitted documentation showing every return filed on time, every payment made promptly, every financial decision reflecting careful planning. Then Father O'Brien, who described my church involvement, my volunteer work, my donations to various causes, my clear-eyed participation in parish life. Patricia Chen from the bank, confirming my accounts were among the tidiest she managed. Each witness built another brick in the wall of competence Gloria had promised to construct. By late morning, the pattern was overwhelming. Every professional who'd observed me closely testified to exceptional capability. Judge Rivera called a 15-minute recess. I stepped into the hallway with Gloria. "How are we doing?" "We're demolishing them, but the real moment comes next. You ready?" "Yes." When court resumed, Gloria stood. "The defense calls Margaret Thompson." I walked to the witness stand, feeling calmer than I'd expected. The bailiff swore me in. I sat, adjusted the microphone slightly, and waited. Gloria's questions were straightforward. She walked me through my background, my service, my marriage to David, his death, my life since. I answered simply, without embellishment, exactly as we'd practiced. "Ms. Thompson, why do you live alone?" "Because I prefer it. I spent 22 years rarely being alone. Now I value solitude." "Do you have friends?" "Yes. People from church, former colleagues, neighbors. I see them regularly. I'm just selective about who I spend time with." "Why didn't you share your financial information with your sister-in-law?" "Because she never asked in good faith. Every time money came up, it was because she needed some. I'm not required to report my finances to anyone except the IRS." "Are you capable of managing your own affairs?" "Completely. I've been doing it successfully for decades." Gloria returned to the defense table and picked up a document. "Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence a verified financial inventory of the respondent's assets." She handed copies to the bailiff. Finch received his copy and began reading. His expression shifted from professional attention to genuine shock. Vivian leaned over to look, and I watched the color drain from her face. Judge Rivera opened her copy. Her eyebrows rose. She looked at me, then back at the document, then at me again. Gloria approached the witness stand. Ms. Thompson, can you summarize your assets for the court? I own 4 properties. My primary residence in San Antonio, a duplex in Austin, a cabin in Colorado, and land in Hill Country. Total value approximately $1.96 million. I have retirement accounts totaling $2.4 million, investment accounts worth $1.85 million, and a scholarship fund in my late husband's name worth $485,000. Total net assets approximately $7.85 million. The courtroom went silent. Vivian's face had gone from pale to gray. Tyler's mouth hung open. Eleanor stared at me like I was a stranger. Judge Rivera set down the document. $7.85 million. Managed how? Personally, I research investments, maintain properties, oversee the scholarship fund. I have professional assistants, an accountant, property managers, but I make all final decisions. And this is documented? Gloria handed another stack of papers to the bailiff. Your Honor, these are certified statements from financial institutions, property records, tax returns for the past 10 years, and third-party verifications. Everything is documented. The judge reviewed the papers methodically. The silence stretched. Finally, she looked up. Ms. Thompson, did the petitioner know about these assets before filing? No, Your Honor. She assumed I had my house and my pension. She never asked for details. Ms. Sinclair, Judge Rivera's attention swung to Vivian. You filed a petition to manage assets worth nearly $8 million without verifying they existed or how they were being managed? Vivian stood, her voice shaking. I didn't know. I thought she needed help. You thought wrong. Spectacularly wrong. The judge's voice was cold. This court takes conservatorship petitions seriously because they remove fundamental rights. You've wasted this court's time, your sister-in-law's resources, and demonstrated either stunning incompetence or something worse. Your Honor, I was trying to protect her from what? From competently managing millions of dollars? From living independently and successfully? From not needing your help? She turned to Finch. Counselor, did you verify these claims before filing? Finch stood slowly. Your Honor, I relied on my client's representations. That's not an answer. Did you conduct any due diligence? No, Your Honor. Then you share responsibility for this disaster. She gathered the papers before her. The petition for conservatorship is denied. Furthermore, this court finds the petition was filed without reasonable basis and possibly with ulterior motives. Ms. Thompson, you may petition for costs and attorney fees. Ms. Sinclair, you and your counsel should expect to hear from the State Bar regarding your conduct in this matter. Vivian sank into her chair. Finch looked stricken. Tyler had disappeared into his phone. Only Eleanor was looking at me, tears streaming down her weathered face. Judge Rivera wasn't finished. Let me be clear. Conservatorship exists to protect vulnerable people. It is not a tool for family disputes. It is not a solution to financial problems. And it is absolutely not a vehicle for accessing someone else's assets. Ms. Sinclair, you have profoundly misused this process. Ms. Thompson, I apologize on behalf of this court that you were forced to defend your competence against such baseless claims. She brought down the gavel. This matter is concluded. People began filing out. I remained seated, feeling the tension drain from muscles I hadn't realized were clenched. Gloria squeezed my shoulder. Let's go. In the hallway, Vivian intercepted us. Her perfect composure had shattered. Mascara smudged under her eyes. Her hands shook as she reached toward me. Maggie, please, you have to understand. I don't have to understand anything. I was trying to help. You were trying to save yourself. There's a difference. I didn't know you had all that money. Because you never asked. You assumed. You built an entire legal case on assumptions. What am I supposed to do now? The question was raw, desperate, but I felt no sympathy, only a cold clarity about exactly what had happened and why. Figure it out, the same way I've been figuring things out for 8 years without your help. Gloria pulled me away before Vivian could respond. We left through the side exit, emerging into December sunshine that felt warmer than it had any right to be. In the parking garage, Gloria turned to me. "How do you feel?" "Tired, relieved, angry. All appropriate. Go home, rest. I'll file the petition for costs tomorrow. You'll recover every penny you spent defending yourself." Will she actually face consequences? The state bar review? Probably a reprimand, maybe worse depending on what they find. Finch will definitely get sanctioned for filing without due diligence. But the real consequence is the public record. This case is documented. Anyone who searches her name will find it. That's the kind of stain that doesn't wash out. I drove home through familiar streets, the courthouse shrinking in my rearview mirror. The house welcomed me with its usual quiet. I made tea, sat at the kitchen table, and simply breathed. My phone buzzed. Eleanor. "Margaret, please, can we talk?" "There's nothing to say." I was wrong. I see that now. Vivian said, "But it doesn't matter what she said. I should have known you better. I should have asked." "Yes, you should have. Can you forgive me?" The question hung between us. I thought about 8 years of holidays spent alone, because family felt like obligation rather than comfort. Years of careful distance, because closeness meant explaining myself to people who'd already decided who I was. I don't know yet, but I know this. You signed papers that could have taken away my freedom based on someone else's lies. That's not something I can just forgive because you asked nicely. What can I do? Nothing right now. Maybe nothing ever. We'll see. I ended the call. Tyler texted next. "Aunt Maggie, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Can we talk?" I replied, "Not yet. Maybe later. Right now I need space." The rest of the day passed quietly. I cleaned the house, not because it needed cleaning, but because the familiar motions helped process what had happened. By evening, the initial numbness had faded into something more complicated. Not quite triumph, not quite relief. More like the settling that comes after a storm, when you're assessing damage and beginning to consider what rebuilding looks like. Vivian didn't contact me that day, or the next. A week passed, then 2. The silence was its own kind of answer. She had nothing to say that wouldn't make things worse. Gloria called with updates. The state bar had opened an investigation. Finch had filed a complaint against Vivian for misrepresenting facts. The court had granted my petition for costs, awarding me full attorney fees plus additional sanctions against Vivian and Finch jointly. "They're appealing," Gloria said. "It won't work, but they're trying." "How much do they owe me?" $75,000. Your fees plus the sanctions. Can she pay it? Not immediately. But the court can garnish wages, put liens on property. She'll pay eventually. 3 weeks after the hearing, Eleanor showed up at my door unannounced. She looked smaller than I remembered, frailer, as if the proceedings had taken something essential from her frame. "Margaret, I know you said you needed space, but I need to say something and I need you to hear it." I stepped aside to let her in. She moved slowly to the living room, lowering herself carefully into the chair by the window. "I failed you. Not just with the petition. For years. I let Vivian tell me who you were instead of finding out myself. I let her paint you as difficult, distant, damaged. And I believed her because it was easier than asking questions. Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you deserve to know. And because I'm ashamed." Her hands twisted in her lap. "At the hearing, listening to all those people talk about you, the doctor, the colonel, everyone, I realized I knew nothing about you. My son's wife, the woman who was there when he died, who honored his memory, who built a life I couldn't see because I wasn't looking. I'm sorry, Margaret. I know it's not enough. But I'm sorry." "What do you want from me, Eleanor?" "Nothing, or maybe just not to be completely shut out. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'd like the chance to know you, the real you, not the version Vivian sold me." I sat down across from her. "I'm not sure I can do that yet." "I understand. But maybe someday?" "Maybe." She stood with difficulty, retrieving her walking stick. At the door, she paused. "The scholarship fund, for David. I didn't know about it until the hearing." I didn't tell anyone. It wasn't about recognition. It's beautiful. Would you, would you let me help? Not with money, I don't have much, but I could write letters to the students, tell them about David, share memories. I considered this. I'll think about it. Thank you. That's more than I deserve. After she left, I sat in the quiet house and thought about family, what it meant, what it required, what happened when assumptions replaced actual knowing. David had loved his mother and sister despite their flaws, but David had also built his real life with me, choosing the partnership we created over the family he'd inherited. Maybe that was the lesson. Not that family didn't matter, but that chosen connections mattered more. The people who saw you clearly and chose you anyway. The relationships built on truth instead of obligation. A month after the hearing, I met with the scholarship fund administrator. We reviewed applications for the next round of awards. 23 students so far, each one carrying forward something of David's spirit without ever having met him. We could expand, the administrator suggested. With the fund's growth, we could award more scholarships, maybe 4 or 5 per year instead of 2. Let's do it. David would have liked that. Driving home, I passed the cemetery where David was buried. On impulse, I turned in. His grave marker was clean, the grass around it neatly trimmed by the cemetery staff. I stood there in the winter afternoon, hands in my pockets, and talked to the memory of him. Your sister tried to take everything. Your mother let her. But we won. The life we built, it held up. Every choice we made, every dollar we saved, every plan we implemented, all of it held up. The wind moved through the trees. A bird called somewhere in the distance. I'm okay, David. I know you worried about what would happen to me after you were gone. But I'm okay. I'm more than okay. I'm exactly who we always said I'd be. Strong enough to stand alone, smart enough to know when I needed help, stubborn enough not to let anyone redefine me. I stayed until the sun dropped low enough to cast long shadows across the headstones. Then I drove home through the gathering dusk, the city lights beginning to spark in the distance. The house was exactly as I'd left it, clean, organized, mine. I made dinner, something simple, just for myself. While I ate, I reviewed emails. One from Gloria with the final accounting of the case. Everything documented, everything concluded. Vivian and Finch would pay costs. The state bar investigation was ongoing. The public record was permanent. Another email from Tyler. Longer this time. He'd gotten a job, entry level, barely above minimum wage, but honest work. He'd moved out of Vivian's house into a shared apartment. He was trying, he said, to figure out who he was without his mother's voice in his head. I know you said maybe later. I'm hoping later comes eventually. I'd like to learn from you, Aunt Maggie. Not about money or investments, about being someone who stands by their choices. You have that. I want it too. I wrote back. Keep the job, pay your rent, build something real. When you've done that for a year, call me. We'll talk. The response came immediately. Thank you. I won't let you down. Whether he would or wouldn't, I couldn't know. But the fact that he was trying mattered. The silence of my house wasn't empty anymore. It was full of possibility, of choices I'd made and defended, of a life built deliberately brick by brick. Vivian had looked at this life and seen emptiness. She'd mistaken independence for isolation, preference for inability, strength for fragility, and she'd paid for that mistake with public humiliation, financial penalties, and the permanent stain of having tried to steal what she couldn't understand. I didn't feel victorious. Victory suggested competition, and this hadn't been a contest. It had been a defense of something fundamental, the right to be who I was without requiring anyone's approval or oversight. That right was intact, documented, legally affirmed. No one could take it from me now. And if they tried, I had a roadmap for exactly how to stop them. The house settled around me with its familiar creaks and sighs. I turned off the lights one by one, leaving only the lamp by my reading chair. Tomorrow I'd return to the quiet routines Vivian had called symptoms. The organized kitchen, the solitary meals, the deliberate choices about how to spend my time and with whom. Those routines weren't symptoms of anything except intentional living. And anyone who couldn't see the difference between being alone and being lonely, between silence and emptiness, between independence and incompetence, well, that was their failure of imagination, not mine. I was 56 years old. I had $7.85 million. I had my freedom, my competence, and my carefully built life. And I had learned something Vivian never would, that the quietest strength is often the strongest, and the people who live without needing applause are the ones who build things that last.